me feeling like I'm academics. Can't
All right. Let's go for the Diddy update real quick. So Diddy. Actually, we're going law and crimes. So I could read the tweets from Inner City Press, but I think that Law and Crimes actually made a update already, unless I'm tripping. Ooh, I can't wait to get to yo. This is gonna be a crazy story. Okay, here we go. 4 hours ago.
Day 2 of jury selection in one of the most high-profile trials in recent memory. Sean Diddy Combs is facing federal charges of racketeering and sex trafficking, and right now, his team and federal prosecutors are trying to figure out which New Yorkers will serve on a jury to determine his guilt or innocence. Who may be ultimately selected to decide one of the most impactful criminal trials in recent years? We're going to break down the big moments that happened today. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay. Hey everybody, this is another Law and Crime line.
All right, let's get to it.
He's a little nervous.
Here we go.
And that's who may be selected ultimately for this jury.
Is this Mark Agnafilio right here? Hold on, let me see. Who are they showing?
This is no easy task for these potential jurors, right? Sitting
that's not a judge.
On one of the most impactful, heavily covered criminal trials in years, currently scheduled for 8 weeks. So we're going to cover what has happened today in the process, who may be selected ultimately for this jury. And this comes as not only Combs has just added another lawyer to his team, while the prosecution objected to another one sitting with him. We're going to talk about that. But this also comes as Combs reportedly said yesterday, he's a little nervous. And that's understandable because why? He's facing 5 federal charges. The disgraced music mogul is accused of running a criminal enterprise that was allegedly focused on his sexual needs and desires, hiring sex workers, procuring drugs and baby oil, setting up hotel rooms for elaborate sex parties called freak-offs. And we expect multiple alleged victims, including Combs' ex-girlfriend Cassandra Ventura, to testify that they felt forced or coerced to participate in these sexual episodes. Racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution. These are the charges. Potentially life in prison if he's convicted. The stakes couldn't be higher. Now, Combs has been behind bars at the MDC, the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, since his arrest last fall. He was denied bail multiple times. Sidebar has been closely following this case even before his arrest. Okay, we were covering when he was first hit with the civil lawsuits, but we covered it every step of the way, right? The raids on his properties in Miami and Los Angeles, his arrest, his indictment, the multiple superseding indictments, and all of the pretrial motions along the way. And we will continue to follow this case for you every step of the way, including when opening statements begin, currently scheduled for next week. We're going to cover every second of this. Now, to talk about what happened today, day 2 of jury selection, to talk about today's proceedings, I want to bring in former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani to talk more about this. Nima, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Love having you on to talk about the Sean Combs case. So first of all, the process has been running quite smoothly and efficiently. I mean, do you think they can select a jury this week with opening statements next week? When you told me this, when they told me that jury selection was only going to take a week, I said, no way, it's not going to be able to take a week. But you think it's possible, generally speaking? We'll get into more specifics about what happened today.
Jesse, first of all, love being on, and we're almost there. Next week, I do believe we are going to get a jury selected this week. And I think the reason we are, really there's 2 reasons. One, we're in federal court, and we know these federal judges like to move. They're really limited when it comes to what they perceive as for-cause challenges. If some of these potential jurors say, hey, I can be fair and impartial, that's good enough for most judges. And they'll say, you know what, counsel, you got to use your peremptory on that. The other reason I think we're moving quickly is because we're having judge voir dire as opposed to attorney voir dire. Attorneys can ask all sorts of questions because, look, let's be honest, Jesse, there's only one person in that courtroom that wants a fair and impartial jury, and that's Judge Subramanian. The lawyers, they're going to want jurors who are favorable for their case. I mean, that they're advocates. That's just the reality of it. So lawyers tend to be a little bit more
What did you say? What? They don't want fair and impartial? They want jurors on their side? Nima, what are you talking about?
Believe it or not, Jesse, advocates actually want to win. So, they'll ask questions, as you know, trying to get into their political beliefs. And really, we want to know, if you're prosecuting or defending a sexual assault case, what are your views on sexual assault? Do you believe it can be underreported? Do you believe it can be falsely reported? Is this rape? Is this regret? I mean, we know what the lawyers are getting after. So the judge obviously isn't going to get into all that. Is going to kind of stay within the boundaries of really what should be a for-cause challenge. And that's why I think the process is moving a lot faster than it would otherwise go.
So let's get into a little bit later on about preemptory challenges and how that's going to work. But right now, as these jurors were brought in for initial questionnaires last week where they filled out all the paperwork, answered questions, now there's individual questioning, and they can be stricken for cause. There's a legitimate reason they can't sit on the jury, whether it's a very unique particular hardship or they're showing some sort of bias. And I have to tell you, Nima, there was a little bit of trouble today, right? You had one prospective juror today who talked about hearing about the Combs case on CNN, admitted that they leaned in a negative light towards him having committed some crimes. That juror was excluded. You had another juror who admitted on the questionnaire, again, that all these prospective jurors had to fill out, that she was a victim of an attempted rape. Reportedly said the cops could have done a lot
Diddy
more.
looking like that?
But this juror wrote on the questionnaire that P. Diddy has money and he could buy his way out. And when asked by the court, well, what did you mean by that? She apparently doubled down and said, just what I wrote. She was excused for cause. Another juror who has a son that works in the DA's office of Rockland County, New York, conceded they aren't sure if they could be fair and can't promise they wouldn't be biased. Struck for cause. Another juror who admitted they would be biased for law enforcement, struck from this jury. Nima, I gotta say, this is what I anticipated would happen. Now, first of all, credit to these prospective jurors for being honest or purportedly being honest, but I expected we would have a lot of people that would show a sense of bias in this case.
I think that's right, Jesse. First of all, in any case, there are a lot of people that just want to get off jury duty, right? They get that summons in the mail and they don't want to be there, especially for a 2-month trial. That's going to get a lot of press and not just attention here, international attention. Now, you have some stealth jurors that maybe want to get on this panel and write a book about it and go on the talk show circuit after this is all said and done. But most Americans aren't really excited to serve as jurors. So you'll get folks that will say anything to get off the panel. Now here we're talking about a celebrity and we're talking about sexual assault. And we know that a lot of people have been victims of sexual assault or sexual abuse. So this may hit close to home and they might not be good jurors on this type of case. And like you said, they may be honest about their experience, not because they want to get off the panel, but because this may be triggering and they may have to relive through trauma that they themselves have experienced or a loved one has experienced because of sexual assault. So those jurors are also getting off. But like you said, this is the type of case that is going to stir up a lot of emotions from a lot of different folks, whether it's race, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's gender and sexual violence, you name it, this case has it.
And look, these are jurors you have to expect to not only know who Sean Combs is, but they're probably been exposed in the last year and a half to material about him. So whether it's the lawsuits, the CNN video, things like that, they've already formed an opinion about it. So aside from the jurors who, by the way, who mentioned or exhibit signs of bias, you also had other jurors who have conflicts or have medical issues that struck them from the jury too. For example, you had one female juror who expressed she has these stomach issues, needs multiple bathroom breaks, struck from the jury. That's not going to work when you have prolonged testimony and maybe not the ability to have multiple bathroom breaks and is going to be distracted. But we have another issue, another juror, actually, to be more specific, that highlights a key issue in this case. The footage from the LA Intercontinental Hotel of Combs purportedly beating up Cassandra Ventura back in 2016. Key piece of evidence in this case. Combs issued an apology on Instagram when a portion of that video was published by CNN last year. This was before his arrest. And again, we believe this is going to be a key piece of evidence for the prosecution to establish that Ventura, who we believe is victim one in this case, was trying to escape a freak-off, that there was a sex worker in the hotel room, i.e., this is evidence of sex trafficking. At least that's the argument to be put forward by the prosecution. Well, what happened? You got a juror today who reportedly told the court, yeah, they saw the video And despite this juror saying they could be fair in court, saying that in the court today on the questionnaire that this juror filled out, apparently the juror wrote they were unsure if they could be fair. But the juror said they would listen to the court's instructions on this. Nonetheless, the juror was excluded. But Nima, this tape, so problematic for jury selection, right?
No question, because like you said, typically when you walk into that courtroom, you haven't seen the evidence in the case, but this is not your ordinary case. Everyone has heard about Sean Combs. Everyone has seen that video. It's disturbing. It is offensive. You know, like you said, I mean, he's holding his towel with one hand. He's beating her as she's trying to leave. How can you not form an opinion? So you have jurors that generally have views on these issues. Then they're bringing their preconceived beliefs about the case because they've all seen the video. And this is one of those unicorn type cases that everyone has already heard about. And there's video evidence. And I expect there to be even more video evidence in the case. So whether it's a case like this or Luigi Mangione, we've all seen the video, Brian Koberger with the bathroom selfie. The jurors that walk into that courtroom, they're going to have prejudged the evidence. So if they say that they can't be fair and impartial, either in their questionnaire or an open court, it may be hard for the lawyers to rehabilitate them, right? Because if you're a lawyer in the case and you think it's a bad juror for the other side, you're going to want to try to make them seem fair and impartial to force the other side to use one of their peremptories, not get them excused for cause, because, of course, cause challenges are unlimited.
And we're going to talk about peremptory, I promise. Anybody who's interested in it, we're going to get to in a second. But as a former prosecutor, I wonder if the prosecution is not happy about that tape being published by CNN. You know, could you imagine?
Cap, we all think the prosecutor put it out. They're probably not happy in this moment because it's making it hard for them to get jurors, because that tape is going to be brought up, because not only was it, if you ask me, fodder to switch the public perception of Diddy, what it did was it biased everyone that we can't find a fair jury.
Imagine if jurors saw it for the very first time at trial. And by the way, the defense tried in pretrial motions to get that tape or a version of that tape or any footage stricken. They didn't want the jurors to see that footage, but a version is going to be shown to them, or multiple versions in different camera angles is going to be shown. But as a prosecutor, do you think that they are like, oh my gosh, I wish that tape didn't come in, we're having trouble finding a jury? Or because you're so cynical about jury selection, Nima, do you think the prosecution's like, we're happy that tape came out, and I hope we get jurors who have formed an opinion, they're just not admitting it during jury selection?
I think it's the latter. I get it why you want jurors who haven't seen the video, but it's such a disturbing video. And just you and I have talked about it. If you guys are watching, go back and watch Jesse's videos when this came out in May of last year. It's such a powerful video. It was such a powerful video that after denying these allegations for months and months and months, from November 2023, when Cassie filed her lawsuit, Diddy's homes are raided in March. Only in May, when this video comes out, Diddy issues an apology. That's how powerful the video is. So the cynic in me, if I'm the prosecution, I like to overwhelm the defense, and I like
they got Diddy
the jurors
crazy in this picture or drawing.
To basically be on my side before the defense even presents their case. I want them to have made up their minds. And when you have a powerful video like this, if I'm the prosecution, I like it out there. I know it can potentially taint the jury pool. And this is me as an advocate, not for someone who's looking for, you know, the fair and just result. The fair and just result is everyone walks in with a blank slate, right? They view only the evidence in the courtroom. But that's just not the reality in a high-profile case like this. That's why, Jesse, there's always the courtroom, but there's the court of public opinion, and the latter does matter.
You know, and you said it very well. We don't know what other videos might be shown. If you take the defense's perspective, I mean, they made an argument in a pretrial motion that the warrants were invalid in this case because they said if the judge who authorized these warrants, if the magistrate court authorized this warrant, saw all the video footage, they would say, wait a minute, I don't see anything illegal here. I think this is all consensual activity, whatever these sex acts that were captured on video. So it'll be interesting to see what is shown and which side it ultimately benefits. But going back to jury selection today, so you had another juror who apparently read an article about the jury selection process. going home from the courthouse yesterday. More specifically, who got excluded from jury service. They were looking to see who got excluded from jury service. Now, the judge today admonished this person, saying they weren't supposed to do that. And apparently, the reporting indicates this might have been a lawyer or someone who was trained as a lawyer. If true, you definitely know you shouldn't do this. The court struck this juror, but Nima, it raises a larger question of how tough is it going to be to make sure whoever's impaneled on this jury doesn't talk about the case, doesn't research the case, isn't affected by the media coverage of it, or who's outside the courthouse. That's why I feel like you need so many alternates.
It's really a big problem, Jesse, and technology has just changed the game, right? Back in the day, you weren't getting all your news from your cell phone, right? You have to go home, you got to turn on the TV and watch the news. But we've seen it time and time again, and it's becoming an increasing problem where a juror is Googling about the case, they're on social media, and you're not supposed to bring in those outside facts and evidence into the courtroom. And like you said, a lawyer should absolutely know better. That's not what you're supposed to do. And that's how mistrials happen. So big issue right now. Now, how do you get around it? You sequester the jury. But again, people already don't want to serve as jurors. Now you got to take their cell phones, confiscate them, separate them from their loved ones for 2 months. It's really a big imposition and a burden. So if you're the judge, you're hoping the jurors follow your instructions, whether they're on the panel or potential jurors, so you don't have this problem. But it's a continuing problem because, of course, jurors have lives outside of that.
Yeah, so basically they're saying that there's no way like Diddy could have this trial where nobody has no information about him, no biases, until they see the evidence in court. They're saying most likely people are going to have some opinion.
So, Nima, let's talk a little bit more about who made it through. So it's been reported that 19 prospective jurors made it through day one yesterday. And today, you had other jurors who made it through. And by that, what I mean is, and to be clear, these are not necessarily jurors who are going to ultimately sit on the jury. They are making up that panel of 45 or so jurors who then both the prosecution and the defense will strike and get down to the number of 12 jurors and 6 alternates. Again, I'll get to that a little bit more. But who made it through today? So you had one juror who made it through that was a student of psychiatry, is at Mount Sinai in surgical pathology, served as an expert witness in medical malpractice cases, indicated his son was beat up and had his cell phone stolen while in college, and was told that the crime was committed by 3 young black men. Both sides agree.
By the way, I know this guy keeps talking. To kind of like highlights how some of the ridiculousness, and it looks like the judge is letting through a lot of shit, right? Like, for example, look at this. The judge says, I asked parties to agree to set aside some jurors with issues like this. It'll take at least 5 minutes each time, and we're going to run out of time. I just wanted y'all to prepare for the trial. So a juror says, I work for Diageo. That's the liquor company that owns Ciroc. The juror says, I was also sexually assaulted at 19. The judge says, sorry this happened to you. Could you be on the case? Now, I would think it's a conflict of interest if you work for Diageo and also if you're a victim of the same crime being alleged. But the judge or the juror actually was allowed to go on to the next round with people saying, oh, maybe you could still be fair and impartial. Okay? The juror says, if the defense says they didn't report, I'd understand why they didn't report. I didn't. I will be biased for victims. We don't know if that person made it through.
Agreed, and so did the court not to strike this juror. You have another potential juror who made it through, someone who says they may be an elected officer to a union. His wife, according to him, was molested by a family member. And while he said he saw the CNN video, the Cassie video, and claimed that Diddy looked angry and hostile and entitled, he said he could be fair. You had another juror who claimed that he would lose 30% of his income if he had to serve on an 8-week trial, but indicated he could survive it. Also told the court that his wife is suing his landlord for repairs. It's important to know of any legal issues they may have. And also claimed that he has friends who have been assaulted. That person moving forward. Another potential juror is a security guard, has seen the Cassie tape, found it disturbing, but indicated could be fair. She was let in. We have a child neglect social worker coming in too. We have another juror who was let in over the prosecution's objection, by the way, who claimed that he had negative interactions with the police, including over stolen sneakers, claimed the police didn't look enough into it. Also said on another occasion, an officer allegedly pushed him during a house party that was being shut down.
All right. He's giving a lot of details. They're trying to fine tune this shit, but like, it's a lot, bro. It is a lot. All right. Let's kind of move on. Because we're just going to hear about these random jurors and then we don't even know if they're making the list, right? Cool. Let's see.